All right. So today, the thing that we're going to be spending the majority of the time on is the contextualization point. Last week, I did sourcing, and a lot of people said that things went really well with that. So I figured this week I would stress more individual aspects that people are kind of struggling with. And it's another category that we can get a rather simple point, if you will. So we're going to talk about sort or contextualization, and then after that, I'm going to be talking about what College Board is actually running on YouTube tonight, and also tomorrow, and then Wednesday and Thursday, and yeah. So without any further ado, let's talk about some context points here. So when it comes to contextualization, the first thing that you need to realize is that the context of everything matters, and I'll send out a link to this on the YouTube page for whenever the video comes out. So that way you guys can go to this website as well. But what is contextualization? Because a lot of people seem to be kind of misinterpreting this. So contextualization is an AP historical reasoning skill that involves the ability to connect events and processes to specific circumstances of time and place, as well as a broader regional, national, or global process, which is a really weird way of basically just saying it's the setting, right? It's connecting everything to the time and place, and then where that falls in relation to the rest of the world, right? It's a skill that is important beyond just earning the point in AP. The best essays, books, and papers all provide background information to set the stage for their main arguments. This is especially going to be true for this class as well as in as you kind of progress through in APUSH, and also just in writing in general. This skill will help you write all of your essays for every class you ever have to write an essay for, whether it be in high school or in college. Setting the stage is always going to be important, right? So the skill of contextualization involves these 3 bullet points here. So being able to describe an accurate historical context for a specific historical development or process, explaining how a relevant context influenced a specific historical development or process, and using context to explain the relative historical significance of a specific historical development or process. So again, this is where it is important. You have to do all 3 of these things, right? You have to describe and explain, and then use your context to explain how that actually matters. So this is why a lot of people kind of fail at getting this point, right? So the easiest way to kind of show how this is impacted is in the last DBQ. So whenever I was talking about industrialization, in order to get the contextualization point, you had to talk about what the world was like before industrialization, and then also how all of the other developments that were there kind of led to that happening, right? So you could describe the world and say, most people lived on farms out in the countryside, and farmed their own goods. There was no real manufacturing, right? And then explain how that essentially caused that development to happen. However, as populations grew, as capitalism expanded, as natural resources became more available, as technology advanced, any of those things that you could kind of use to say, as this happened, then, get into the next part, people started moving into cities, people went to work in factories, that kind of thing, where you're connecting all 3 of these things. You're describing what it was like before, what was causing it to change, and then how that cause actually resulted in the change that the prompt is asking you. Now, for some prompts, this is going to be easier than others, right? So the Industrial Revolution one, you kind of had to be able to know what was going on everywhere beforehand, and that's going to be true for most of the contextualization things. However, it's not always necessary that you know a ton of background information. So we're going to talk about that too. So how is this done? Your goal is to situate. So put it in a position or place, your answer to the question among historical events, developments, or processes within the broader regional, national, or global context in which they occurred. This means the contextualization is a lead-in. Think about what the reader needs to know to understand the significance of this topic, which is why I said before, it's essentially what happened right before it, right? So it leads into everything. So, on this next part, it's going to explain what you should really do, right? So, write 3 to 4 content or fact-rich analytical sentences that include specific details. Specific is the point here, right? So, this happened a lot with the Native American, like one where people would bring it up and say, Native American tribes lived in the Americas. Okay, that's not specific enough. Which ones got impacted? Which ones got dealt with? How did their lives specifically change, right? So that was why I said, like, you needed to talk about, like, the Inca, the Aztec, the Maya, like, the specific peoples whose lives changed. Then describe the events or process that happened before the time period of the question or in another region that's relevant. For prompts that talk about multiple regions, you can actually address them in the same time period, but in a different place, right? So that's a lot harder. I don't think I would recommend that for very many people at all, but it is still possible, right? Then for these, as it goes on, and it says like examples for AP Euro and World. But so an example for a different period. If the question is about period 3, use information from the end of period 2. So dynasties and empires fell, so yada yada, right? So talking about immediately what happened before. So your DBQ this week is all about stuff, again, from 1750 to 1900. So whatever might be happening in there, maybe use some things that happened before that time period that explain why that occurred, right? So think about some things that happened in the time period from 1450 to 1700. What happened in that time period that led to these events happening, right? We're going to skip the AP Euro one because that's really where this like second part kind of comes in with the region thing. And that's saying like if the question is about France, you can discuss how something similar happened, like the American Revolution, whatever else. But for AP World, if the question is about post-classical East Asia, discussing post-classical Europe and Africa could be relevant if you're discussing what's going on globally, but that's a lot harder. You need to have then more information about the rest of the world than you already need, right? Make a connection to the question that is asked. Information cannot be random. You may not simply spew out unrelated facts. Why does this matter to the question at hand, and how does this lead into your thesis, right? So that's why I was saying a lot of people didn't get the point here because they would just talk about specific things. They would talk about inventions that were made in the Industrial Revolution, or these are some things that occurred during, right? But you need to say how those things actually changed life, right? So that was one thing where a lot of people seem to kind of fall off and not get, credit or the point on that. So it's got a sample prompt on there and everything else in here, so you can look at that later on and break it down. But that's kind of the general gist of context, right? You're setting it up. You're talking about what's happening immediately beforehand. But I think the thing that is going to kind of help you all the most is understanding you need to do all of these things. You need to not only describe what other things are going on in the world, but explain how that's relevant. How does that relate to what is actually changing, right? This is one of the easiest points to get, but only if you know the information, right? It is extremely difficult to get this point if you don't have that background knowledge. The only way that you'd be able to do that is if you have the background knowledge on a different region, right? So that's why I said like that's very, very difficult and I wouldn't go to it for most people. But if you look at this prompt whenever you get it and you go, I have no idea what happened in the Middle East before this time period that the prompt is asking me about. Okay, well, best chance you got then. Go for a long shot and say, it's similar to what was happening in Europe or in Asia in the East Coast, right? Rather than the Western Asia and the Middle East, right? So that would be a way that you could kind of approach it that would make things different, that would possibly get you the point, right? But again, I view that almost as a last ditch effort instead of like a direct way in which you should approach things. The other thing that I want to talk about today is this stuff. If it'll actually pull up, I don't know if it did or not. Here we go. I'm going to share the other screen here. So College Board is putting together a series of like their review stuff. They've been doing these videos every single day during the week. I cannot stress this enough. If you are looking to review things and you're going, I really hate going over these packets, I just wanted to hear someone talk to me. They're long videos. Some of them are short. Some of them are long. They're between 25 and 40 minutes usually. But if you're looking to review stuff, and if you're going, man, I hate looking up all this information, I'm not going to remember it this way, watch the videos. Watch the videos to review. It goes through every single thing. They have finished all of the actual things that they needed to cover. They have finished reviewing everything that will be on the actual exam already. So there's really no excuse that you can kind of build up between now and the next 23 days. Because that's what we have. We get 23 days, essentially, until you guys take the exam. Oh, that's a lie. You do not have 23 days. We've got, I messed up on that one, 18 days. Sorry. Forgot I had my dates mixed up there. So there's 18 days, right, between now and then, which means if you started these videos and you just watched one a day, you'd get through quite a bit of stuff, right? They really don't like start here, so like they end up going through. There's 25 videos. Some of them, like I said, are shorter than others, but there are going to be another 5 that they're doing this week. This week they are doing exclusively practice exam things. So today at 6 o'clock tonight, they are doing a timed AP exam practice. Now, when they're doing this, they're going to have an actual DBQ prompt that is going to come up. You'll be able to access it, and then essentially you are going to do it, right? Now, if you choose to do it, that's awesome. I cannot recommend it enough. I would use all the practice stuff that you can get in. Tomorrow, they're going to have a review of it, and they're going to talk about, what would count for what and what score is what. And then on Wednesday, they're going to do another one. And then Thursday, they'll review that one. So if you are looking to do more practice stuff, it's all right here. And these aren't going to go away. So even if you can't do it tonight, at any point in the next 18 days, you can sign on, look at these, go to it, and then you can practice it whenever, right? But if you want to stay on top of everything live, it's at 6 o'clock tonight. I know you don't really have anything else going on for your other classes at school during the time, so at least there's that. But I would highly encourage you to do that. On Friday, they're doing a final lesson, tips and tricks, best wishes type thing. So I'm going to post that up after they're done with it all and say, hey, those of you that didn't look at any of these things, here you go. Just kind of something to help you along the way. The other thing that I want to talk about, I pulled up a bunch of stuff that I said, hey, I want you guys to look at some point during the week and make sure that you can kind of do, weekend, to make sure that you can kind of do all this stuff. So I'm going to pull that up now. So on Edsby, I posted a bunch of stuff here that had these bookmarks. The first couple, these first 2 like PDFs are essentially an exam day checklist, but also how to make sure that your MyAP student account is actually set up. Because if that account is not set up, you can't take the test, right? So make sure that everything is set up. You know your password, you know how to get online. and all those other things, right? So whenever you go on here, it's got the login page. Go there, follow these directions, make sure your email's working, make sure you have everything set up that you need to, so that way you can actually take the test when you need to. The other one is just a checklist saying here, you're going to get this APID at some point on Tuesday. Not this Tuesday, but Tuesday that you take the test, right? So the test is on a Thursday. They said they'll send it out about 48 hours before the test. So on Wednesday that week, on the 20th, we're just basically going to be making sure that everyone can log in, everyone knows their information, everybody's ready to go. And then I'll try to de-stress you all and tell you funny stories or something like that. But just something that you can kind of write down for your notes and stuff. Write down the name of your exam, write down, what's going on with your check-in time and everything else. And we'll talk more about that. That whole week is just going to all be about getting this set up, right? The last thing that I absolutely want you to do, and there's just more information on here. Again, it's just a checklist. That I absolutely want you to do, though, is go to this here website, and you just click right on it. So when you get here, this is what you will actually look like whenever you take your AP exam. For this one, you can just type in practice. So you type in practice, and then it's going to have all of your things, right? When you actually do this, when you sign on, it will have a timer down here informing you how long it's going to be before your exam starts. You should log in at least 30 minutes before the exam to enter all of this stuff in, right? So whenever I come in, I'm going to go, boom, I'm going to enter all this in. That's not actually when I was born. But I'm just going to punch all those things in. I'm going to slide on down. Where am I testing from? I'm at home, right? And yes, I agree to the terms and conditions. Hooray. I don't think it makes you feel anything else. And then going to slide on down to the next field whenever I can. Yeah. What else do I have to punch it? Oh, I have to say when I was actually. Hey, yeah. Right? So they go, all right, hooray. Your exam's going to begin soon. Do not refresh this page or hit the back button. Can't stress this enough. If they tell you not to do that, that means don't do that, right? If you're looking to submit a text file at the end of it, in other words, you can type this in a Google Doc or in Microsoft Word. I really, really encourage you to do that. Don't just type it straight on their program. Type it in something else that has a spell check set up that's not stupid, right? So Microsoft Word, Google Docs, either one. At the end of that, you can attach the file. It's got like guidelines here. Make sure you follow all of the directions. Please follow all of the directions. Don't end up getting your test submitted back and saying, nope, tough, you didn't follow the directions. The other thing you can do, you can attach a photo if you do it by hand. So you can actually write it on hand and attach a photo. Let's say how to do that there. Or you can copy and paste it from Microsoft into there, right? It's going to keep you at this page until the timer comes up. Once the timer has actually gone through and it tells you, your AP exam will automatically start at this time, right? When this timer is done, it will bring you to the actual exam. Now, obviously, since this is the practice exam demo, it's not going to be your actual DBQ. But it does give you an idea kind of what to expect, what to look at, and more importantly, how to feel comfortable with the website, right? The last thing that I want to have happen is at 2:45, a bunch of people are done with their DBQs. They're all done with it. They're ready to go, and you don't know how to submit it, right? So that's what this is for. This is for you to kind of practice, make sure you get everything right, make sure you know how to do everything correctly, make sure that you've got everything set up beforehand. You don't want to have a panic moment where you're going, oh my God, I finished. How do I submit it? What's happening? Am I going to get credit? Meltdown, right? That's the last thing that we want to have happen. So this is to make sure that you are comfortable with the system, right? Whichever one you prefer to do, whether it be handwritten on Google Docs or Microsoft Word, it doesn't matter. But I will tell you, if you do it by hand, a couple things are going to happen. Number one, you need to make sure that you are writing in pen. Pencil doesn't show up as well in a photograph, pen will. Number two, you need to make sure you're writing legibly and that your picture is actually not a bad picture. It needs to be 100% accurate on it whenever you actually take that, because there are no redos. They're not going to send you a notice 2 days later and be like, hey, your picture was kind of blurry and it didn't upload right, so can you resend it? There's no resending. Once you send it, that is your submission. I highly discourage you from doing it by hand. I would 100% do it online, because you have all your access to all of your review stuff that we've been doing online. So you can always use it all right here. Right? So as this timer ticks down, we're going to get here and it's going to go, start working on exam question 1. Boom. On exam day, your question will display here. Here's how you should use this demo. Take 5 minutes to create a response. So essentially, you're going to include your AP ID and your initials in the top of your response. Your handwriting, include a page number, and write a paragraph or 2 about anything you'd like. And I'm not going to actually do it, but here we go. So if you're taking an exam with 1 question, which you are, right, you'll have 50 minutes to craft a response and submit it. Now, what that means is you actually only have 45 minutes before everything kind of ends. The last 5 minutes are for you to submit it, right? So just know that, like, kind of as we go. So whenever it says that at the bottom, it says you must attach or paste your responses, hit submit before it goes. At the bottom here, it says attach response, paste response, right? So if you hit paste, you're literally just going to paste whatever it all is in here and say, hiya, right? Here's my YouTube link. So you can just paste your answer in here. If you are attaching your response, you can either attach a text file or a photo, right? Again, make sure you include your AP ID, not your school ID, your AP ID, and make sure that's right up here at the top, right? So let's say I want to attach a text file. You'll click that. You'll say, hooray, and then you'll browse for your file, pick one, go for it, submit it, right? Once you are done with this, and I'll just pick a random, here you go, that you take chapter 34. You're going to submit it, right? Once you submit, you cannot go back, right? So you'll submit it. It'll bring you to the end and say, all right, now this is question 1, you're done. Question 2 will automatically start now, right? And it's going to limit you. We only have 1 question. There is no other thing after you submit it. After you submit it, it's basically going to say, all right, there we go, on to the next part, right? So make sure that you're familiar with this. Make sure you're comfortable being able to submit things on here, because there are some people that really struggle with submitting everything online, right? And I can't stress this enough. You should definitely at this point know what you are submitting. Make sure you name it the right way. Don't submit the wrong file, because that also would be real bad, because you cannot resubmit it, right? So name it. Make sure that you are selecting the right thing. Take those 5 minutes to really double check. Am I submitting the right thing? Yes? Okay. Then you do it, right? But make sure that you're taking your time. Please don't try to whip through this and think, oh, I need to be done with it immediately. No, you don't. Take your time. Make sure you're doing it right. That's what matters the most. All right? So at this point, I'm going to stop the recording. I'm going to answer any questions that people have. So please don't be afraid to send me any messages throughout the week. And as always, I'll be online from 1 to 3 to answer any questions that you guys have in one-on-one setting. So